Welcome to the 21st unit, Unit 21 of this course in Global English. We are doing reading module, Unit 11, and today we are going to do some dictionary work while looking at a story which has been very popular among people who like to read English literature. This is rather a well-known story from English literature, the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Actually, in the tradition of many epics and many other classics, this poem tells us a story, gives us a moral lesson, but it does that in verse, which can be sung, which may be easier to remember for many people, and for children in particular, this may make a good bedtime story. Why have we selected it for you? Well, for only one very important reason, apart from the fact that we did not take something like this from a poem, a story which goes in poem, and like any other language, like any other literature, English also has many of them. So, we thought you should know some of these stories that are in verse. If you read them out loud, if you read this story out loud, recite the lines as they say, you will enjoy its rhythm, its rhyme, and of course, the conversation, the dialogue, and above all, the poetic element in it and the story in it. So, but this poem was written, as you might see, in 1842, which makes it almost over 150 years old. Naturally, any language changes constantly, but on a day-to-day basis, we do not notice the change because we also change along with the language. But when you look at some old language, 100-year, 200-year-old, you can look at the other languages that you use at home, Tamil or Hindi or any other language, you will immediately notice that many words, pronunciation of these words, sentence constructions, the idioms they have used meant differently at that time. Same is true also of this poem. Robert Browning, by any standards, a great poet in English, he comes in that tradition of 10 poets beginning with Chaucer, Shakespeare, Milton, Donne, Dryden, Pope, Wordsworth, Coleridge, like that, you come down to Tennyson, Browning, and you go to modern poets or not so modern poets now, Eliot and others. So, it's a great poet. If you really want to have a good knowledge of the English language, you should also sometimes read these works of literature. So, that is another reason why we selected this poem. This was obviously written for children in the year 1842, and it tells the story of an imaginary town. The town is called Hamelin, located somewhere in Germany near the famous city of Hanover by the river Weser, and then the story is believed to be about 500 years old, and it tells you how that town was once infested with rats. The town was attacked by so many rats and they proliferated. They grew in numbers and they became such a menace that even dogs and cats were afraid of rats rather than rats being afraid of them. Men had no peace, women had no peace, the entire town was disturbed. No matter what you keep where, they were either torn, eaten, it was difficult to do anything. Then the people approached the administrators of the city, the mayor of the city and the corporators who together ran this city, and told them that they must do something about this problem of rats. The town must get rid of them, otherwise the people told these leaders, these administrators, that people would get rid of them. Luckily, it so happened, not that the corporators were able to do anything, but luckily it so happened at that same moment, a Pied Piper happened to come there, and he told the city council, he told the administrators that for some money he would solve their problem. They agreed to give that piper that kind of money, but once the problem was solved, it's very interesting to see how Piper solved that problem. I won't tell you, you must read it for yourself. But then when the piper came back for his money, the corporators went back on their word. They said, no, the piper could take about a few guilders, not as many as he is asking for. Then the piper was very angry, and this time he gave the city corporators in the town of Hamelin severe punishment. And what was that punishment? That is the story. You must read that story for yourself. The story is rather long. It's about, as we, as the Google says, we found it from the net. It has 303 lines. It's rather a long story, very well narrated, not boring at any point at all. And most words in this story are those that you already know. There are hardly any difficult words. Say, for example, look at the opening, Hamelin towns in Brunswick, by famous Hanover city, the river Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you never espied, but when begins my ditty? Almost 500 years ago, to see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Hardly a difficult word. Ditty, D-I-T-T-Y, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th line, last word of the first stanza. In the 6th line of the first stanza, the last word in that line. Okay. So some of these words occasionally may be new for you, and that is when you can enrich your knowledge of the English language. You should not say, I can make out the meaning from the context. You of course can, and you should be able to, but there is nothing like being sure. So you must go to the source, check what it meant, how it was pronounced, where the origin of the word, how did the word come into English, is it of English origin or has it come from another language, because English is one language which has borrowed from almost all languages of the world. Almost, I said, not necessarily, but definitely many languages of the world. And therefore, when you check these things, you not only know about the English language, you also know about the world. So check some of these words, okay? And as far as possible, don't read these, this story silently. Recite it, rhyme. In the earlier unit, in an earlier unit, we said that in poems, rhythm is important, rhyme is important. Then you will get the feel of English rhythm, and it will also help you speak English better. We'll talk about that in a later unit, but it can be good practice for you. So if you read it in rhythm, Hamlinstown in Brunswick, by famous Hanover city, the river Weser, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side, a pleasanter spot you never spied. Now, what's the meaning of the word spied? So there are occasional words like I said spied and ditty. Here the word spied would mean see, but how has it come to SEEC? A pleasanter spot you never saw. But how did the spy came to mean see? Okay, how did it come to mean see, or did it have another meaning at that time? So that is why you should check, and then enjoy the story. So for example, look at the way the poet makes you feel what kind of a menace these rats were. Otherwise in this city, it was a very peaceful city, no problem, they lived happily, they had a town corporation which ran their business. But about 500 years ago, they came across a problem which was, which has gone down into its history, and that was the problem caused by proliferation of rats. So many rats. He says, rats. They fought the dogs and killed the cats. See, remember, this is a bedside story for the children. How amused, how enjoyable it could be to them. You can also try it and read it aloud with younger members of your family, and you will find that it not only gives them amusement, it also helps them improve their spoken English, just as it helps you improve your spoken English. Okay? So read it in rhythm. They fought the dogs and killed the cats and bit the babies in the cradles. Exasperated. So people were not reading it slowly, not like they fought the dogs and killed the cats. No, it is a very aggressive rats. So your rhythm must also be aggressive. Rats. They fought the dogs and killed the cats and bit the babies in the cradles, and ate the cheese out of the vats and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles. Split open the kegs in salted sprats. Check the meaning of the word sprats. Okay, made nests inside men's Sunday hats. Why Sunday hats? This is the culture among English speaking people, that they go in the best of their dresses to church on Sunday. So they have an idiom which is called, oh, so you have come in your Sunday best. Not only best dress, but best of the best that is reserved for their trip to Sunday when they attend the church service. Okay, so that there suddenly so many rats came to the city, and they proliferated. They gave birth to their offspring. That no place was safe. Even men's Sunday hats, which were kept with great care, became their nests. Read like that, reciting with some rhythm, once again, rats. They fought the dogs and killed the cats and bit the babies in the cradles, and ate the cheeses out of the vats and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles. Split open the cakes of salted sprats, made nests inside men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats. by drowning their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. You know, very idiomatic. You know, why does it say they drowned even women's chats? At that time in the 19th century, there was a part of the British culture that when some women came together, they chatted about a lot of things in a lighter vein. You know, not so many women who went to work in offices or outdoors. So they had some leisure, and when they got together, read it silently if you don't otherwise like it. And then once again, read it aloud, recite with rhythm. If you have difficulty getting the rhythm, keep the poem before you, go to net and check how it is done in some quote unquote authentic manner. Okay? You will find then, you know, that not only you enjoy the story, as I have been saying again and again, you also enjoy the poem, you know, your knowledge of the language improves and your knowledge of the world improves. It's very important. I have given only a few stanzas, not all, there was no point. Okay? To read the full poem, you should use the link. You know, it's very easily available, you know, on the net, no problem, you know. And you can read it, download it, recite with the voice on the net, without the voice on the net, you know, without the text before you, with the text before you. You can do it in many different ways, and believe me, this is one of the best ways of learning and improving your knowledge of the language, knowledge of the English language. Okay, so I leave you there, and I would like to take you to some exercise. After you read it, okay, after you have made sure that okay, you know the meaning of all those words, rather rare, infrequent words, words that are no longer in use, words that were used only in the 19th century, which is when the poem was written. Even then, after you have read the poem, you should check, you know, without the dictionary before you. Did you get the meaning of the word right? Spied and ditty and vermin and vats and ladles and kegs and sprats and consternation and gilder and trap and hap. Okay? You will not only learn the meaning of these words, you will, while doing this, you will also learn the meaning of many other words. Okay? And as I have been saying, you will also know about the world. So read the poem first, take your time, and then make a list of words that are new for you. And once you have that list before you, check their meaning, pronunciation, origin, the grammatical information related to these words, and you will find that you are really enjoying this self-learning course. Okay? Now to help you check, okay, and to further enrich your knowledge of the language and the subject, I made these notes. You know, I have been saying from Unit 1, check with the dictionary, and you may have a natural question: which dictionary? In the market, you know, English language dictionary is a huge business. One publisher alone has dozens of editions. Which edition do you buy? One that costs you less? Well, you may. Or one that gives you more words, but it will cost you more. A dictionary that gives you more information about word, or a dictionary just gives you meaning of the word. After all, you know, you don't need to know about everything. But if you ask me, if you take the suggestion, you know, then a good dictionary has certain features. Look at those features, and then you can decide depending upon your inclination, depending upon your needs, which dictionary will you like to use. Even online, there are many kinds of English dictionaries, not one, not two, not three, dozens. So therefore, you must have a yardstick, a benchmark, or a set of criteria, criterions, a criteria, a set using which that dictionary X is better than dictionary Y, and dictionary X is not as good as dictionary Y. Then you can decide for the value of your money which dictionary would you like. So what are some of the features of any dictionary, and you can measure or evaluate any dictionary on the basis of these considerations. Number one, A. How many words does this dictionary give you? English language, ordinarily speaking, today standard, in standard use, you have nearly 200,000 words. Out of these 200,000 words, you definitely, some words are used most frequently. About 15,000 words are used frequently, and chances are the meanings, the spelling, the pronunciation, at least about 10,000 of them. But there still are about 150,000 words, which, one of which might come before you in whatever you read, write, listen. Okay? So which dictionary is good? Given a choice, if you have a choice, if you have some money, if you can download a dictionary which gives you more words, then go for that. Otherwise, there are dictionaries only with 65,000 words. There are dictionaries only with 15,000 words. But there also are dictionaries with 240,000 words. As we believe in India, being somewhere in the middle, go for a dictionary which has about 140, 150,000 words. Then the second criterion is meanings. It's quite often, the case that a word has more than one meaning. A word is used in more than one senses. Say, for example, look at a word like light. Now, light can mean something against darkness. Light can mean knowledge. Okay, light can be an adjective, which is against heavy. Light can be a verb. You light a candle. Okay, you light a fire. Okay, and then there are other derivations. The lighter, then enlighten or lighten. Lighten the mood, lighten the moment. Etc. So there are lots of meanings. Some dictionaries will give you about over a dozen meanings. So given a choice, once again, it is good to go for a dictionary which gives you more meanings and more usage. How in each meaning this word is used in a different context, so that it's a resource with you for the rest of your life. Actually, if you like, you can look at about 4 or 5 dictionaries and you can write a review of these dictionaries. That can be a part of this unit using the criteria I have suggested here. So not just the number of words, the number of meanings for every word, and meanings can change according to parts of the speech. Light can be a verb, light can be an adjective, light can be a noun, light can be an adverb. They walked lightly. Okay, here it's used as an adverb. So with some changes, some derivations, they can mean a lot of different things. So a dictionary that gives you all of these meanings is better than a dictionary which gives you only 1 or 2 meanings. Okay, let's go next. Let's go to the next. Okay, some dictionaries show you pronunciation. In English, that is very important. Unlike in many other languages of the world, orthography is not a sure indication of pronunciation in English. Of course, you know the pronunciation of a lot of frequent words in spite of differences in spelling, but then there can be at times words which look familiar, but they are not. So it is good therefore to have I readily it comes to my mind is a word like, let's say, from those who go to the harbor or port side frequently, they may have used this word. Okay, QUAY. When you embark from the boat, you land here, and then you come to land. Okay, how is this word pronounced? This word is not pronounced in this manner. It's not pronounced like this, not ka-wa-a. No, it is pronounced like ki, and it rhymes with B, C. Okay, not with be, sway, not that way. So English sometimes, not always, quite often you will find that spelling is an indication of its pronunciation, but not always. So does your dictionary give you a pronunciation of the new word? Many dictionaries usually do. You will hardly come across a dictionary that in English that does not give you the pronunciation of an English word, but there are those dictionaries. So make sure while acquiring or downloading a dictionary that it gives you pronunciation of words. Okay. Some dictionaries also give you etymology, where the word comes from. So for example, you can check with the dictionary where this word comes from. Is it Greek or Latin or French or some Indian language? In English, you have many words. Some people claim that close to 3,000 words in the English language of today have gone from Indian languages. Words like Pandit, Jungle, Guru, ashram, yoga, they have all gone from the Indian languages. So like that, English has borrowed, or English has taken or accepted words from many different languages of the world, and that way English has filled in some gap it had in its own dictionary, in its own vocabulary. It is therefore today in an enviable position of a language using which you can practically describe anything from highly sophisticated sciences like nanotechnology, biotechnology, infotechnology, astronomy, astrophysics, or arts like dance, filmmaking, literature, music, anything. Okay, and that's because English has been very open to taking new words. But for us learners of the language, it at times creates problems. We really do not know what it means, how it is spoken. So it may not be a bad idea for you occasionally to check for etymology, the origin of the word, and you will learn a lot of things. So some dictionaries that give you etymology of the word may therefore be better than those that do not give you etymology. Okay. Then there are other things like are the the dictionary is of course now you have it online, and therefore that problem is not there, but until recently it was printed stuff. So if you have very small letters, if you have hardly any margin on the pages, then it is hard on eyes. No illustration, hard on you. There are many things you do not understand by definition of words. But if there is an illustration, then that illustration makes it easy for you to understand the meaning of the word. So a dictionary that gives you examples, usage, is printed in larger font, has some space, has some other value addition, like gives you synonyms, gives you illustration more than anything else, then that dictionary is definitely better. And if it is still lighter in spite of pages, then that's wonderful. Then you could go for that dictionary. Of course, children and old people prefer light dictionaries with bigger fonts, but now that problem has been solved to a large extent by electronic dictionaries. Electronic dictionaries don't have the problem. You can enlarge the font size as much as you like, and you really don't have to learn the exotic phonetic alphabet, strange looking phonetic alphabet to decipher the pronunciation of new words. These days, electronic dictionaries speak the word out for you. So the moment you click on pronunciation, you hear the word pronounced as X or Y. Okay, so that's very fine, and that's English language that way is in a very enviable state of progress, that it has all kinds of dictionaries online. We cannot say that about many other languages we know. So this is how you can decide, but use a dictionary consistently so that you get used to it and you do not waste a lot of time finding about these things. But the point I am making is that do not take a shortcut while learning. Shortcut is all right, when you have to move from one place to another on a daily basis. You then really don't need to see something on your way. You are in a hurry and you can do that. But when you are learning, then it's not good to take a shortcut. So when you look up a word in a dictionary, it's quite often we go to the dictionary only for the meaning of the word, which is fine, that is the most important part of the word, but that is not the only important part of the word. The word has a spelling, the word has pronunciation, the word has grammatical category, the word has an origin, the word has a usage. If you look at all of these things, your knowledge of the language grows at a very rapid speed, and without much effort, then you learn the language. So that is how I took so much time in the middle of this course to draw your attention to the use of dictionaries. I am sure you are going to do that. Let's have some exercise to make sure that you read this story, this poem, and you understood understood the story. So, for example, they are not very difficult exercises, but just to see that you understand the link. Hamlin town is situated on the bank of which river? Of course, very easy. But later I will ask you which side of this river, north or south. So if you haven't read it carefully, go and read it carefully. Go back and read it carefully once again. Okay. Near a city, the Hamlin town was located near a well-known city. Which city? Okay. How old is this story? Of course, that's not very difficult, not very challenge. The town was then attacked by strange looking what? Not very difficult once again. Okay, come to number 5. Now, if you haven't read carefully, and if you do not remember the word that came before hats, then you will have difficulty. So what I am trying to tell you is the following, that when you read some of these things, read it once for the sound, read it next for its grammar, pronunciation, etc., whatever. But you must also read it silently for the poetic part of it. Why does it say, even inside men's Sunday hats? Sunday by itself doesn't mean anything. Here it means, though they keep these hats carefully, though they had kept these hats carefully, hidden in boxes, hidden beyond the reach of ordinary creatures, yet the rats could reach there and spoil their hats. So look at it that way carefully, and you will find that in the initial reading it does take time, but then in subsequent readings it doesn't. And what is more important, the next time you read some next story or a poem or a story in a poem, you will find that you do not have to go to a dictionary. You will hardly come across new words if you read carefully and regularly. Of course, the answers are given at the end. Like I have said exercise 1. So at the end you will find answers to exercise 1. Check there, and if you have a mistake, go back to the original text and see what the word was. Here, pretty simple. There are statements. Do you think they are true or false? Say, for example, Hamelin town was situated on the south bank of the Weser River. What do you say? Is it a true statement or a false statement? Recall. Don't jump to the text right away. And if you cannot recall, then go back to the text. Okay? And finally check with the answers given. Third, similarly, more than one word. You may need a phrase, a word, or more than one word, even a few words to fill in the blanks here, but that will test your comprehension of the story and of the language. Take time. Here are the answers. So, for example, answers to exercise 1, 2, and 3. Before we close for today, you see, it's not possible on any course, but a classroom, a course can be a guide to indicate which direction we should take. So, what we have tried to do is to tell you about a variety of reading, stories, Indian, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Panchatantra, okay, or European, like this poem, reports. So, if you look at a variety of things and you can create these exercises yourself, and then you will find you really learn very rapidly, and soon you may be as confident in the English language as anybody else. Languages, as I have been saying, are best learned by doing rather than by passively only listening or reading. So, read, listen, but also create exercises for yourself. Listen and read more than this course has told you about, and you will find in no time, you master the language, and you can also help others learn this language. See, they check the answers, and thank you very much.